The story is one of the most interesting parts of the leaks. Reports have suggested that Far Cry 7 will focus on a wealthy family that has been taken hostage by a group called the Sons of Truth. Instead of following a simple story where the player moves from one mission to the next, the game may give players more control over how they handle the rescue. Different family members could be placed in different locations, forcing the player to decide who to help and when to help them. This could give the story a much stronger sense of urgency. The biggest reported feature connected to the story is a 72-hour time limit. According to leaks, players may have a limited amount of time to rescue the family before things go badly. The exact way this timer will work is not fully clear, and Ubisoft has not confirmed it, but the idea could change the way players explore the open world. Previous Far Cry games have given players a lot of freedom to ignore the main story. Players could spend hours hunting animals, collecting items, capturing enemy bases, exploring the map, or completing side activities before returning to the main missions. A real-time limit would make those choices more important. Spending too much time exploring could mean losing valuable time that could have been used to rescue someone. The timer could also create different outcomes. If the player reaches a family member quickly, that person may survive. If the player takes too long, the situation could change. This would make the player's decisions matter more than they did in many previous Far Cry games. Instead of simply asking players to complete missions, the game could ask them to decide which problems deserve their attention first. Some reports also mention safe areas where players can prepare and manage their equipment. These locations could become important because the player would need places to plan their next move. If the timer pauses in certain safe locations, players could use them to decide where to go next without feeling constant pressure. The Sons of Truth are also expected to play a major role in the story. Instead of having the entire game revolve around one major villain, Far Cry 7 may focus more on an organized group. Leaks have suggested that players could capture and question enemies to gain information. This would add an investigation element to the game and could help players discover where the family members are being held. The setting is another area surrounded by leaks. Alaska has been strongly connected to the next Far Cry projects, although there is some confusion because Ubisoft is reportedly working on more than one Far Cry game. One project, reportedly called Project Blackbird, is believed to be the main single-player Far Cry experience. Another project, known as Project Maverick, has been linked to an extraction-style multiplayer game. Some leaked information about Alaska may belong to one project, while other information could belong to the other. If Alaska is used for Far Cry 7, it would give Ubisoft a very different environment from previous games. The series has already explored tropical islands, snowy mountains, rural America, and fictional countries. Alaska could combine large forests, mountains, rivers, snow-covered areas, remote settlements, and open wilderness. This setting would also fit the reported survival focus. The environment could become more than just something to look at. Cold weather, wildlife, long distances, and difficult terrain could affect the player's decisions. Moving across the map could require more planning, especially if the player is trying to reach a specific location before time runs out. Wildlife has always been part of Far Cry, but an Alaskan setting could allow Ubisoft to introduce animals that feel more connected to the environment. Dangerous wildlife could become another threat while traveling through the wilderness. If survival systems are expanded, players may also need to think more about resources and equipment. The gameplay leaks suggest that Ubisoft is looking at several changes to the traditional Far Cry formula. Weapon durability has reportedly been mentioned, along with stronger resource management. These systems could make weapons and equipment feel more important. Instead of having access to everything at all times, players may need to maintain their gear and decide what is worth carrying. Movement could also receive improvements. Reports have mentioned features such as tactical sprinting and sliding. These would make movement more active during combat and exploration. Vehicles are also expected to return, which would make sense for a large open world where traveling long distances on foot could take too much time. The technical side of the game may be changing as well. One of the biggest reported differences is the possible move from Ubisoft's Junia engine to Snowdrop. The Junia engine has powered Far Cry games for many years, while Snowdrop has been used for other Ubisoft projects. Changing engines is a major decision for any game. Snowdrop could give Ubisoft different tools for creating large environments, detailed weather effects, lighting, and other world systems. If Far Cry 7 really does use a large wilderness setting, these improvements could be useful. Weather could become particularly important. A game set in Alaska could make strong use of snow, storms, fog, and changing visibility. These effects could influence both the look of the world and the way players move through it. A storm could make it harder to see enemies, while heavy snow could change how the environment looks and feels. The technical improvements could also help with the game's open world. Far Cry has always depended on giving players a large space where they can approach situations in different ways. A stronger engine could help Ubisoft create more detailed areas without making the world feel empty. The reported story structure may also change how the open world is designed. If family members can be rescued in different orders, the game needs to support different paths through the map. Missions cannot always depend on the player completing them in one fixed sequence. This could make the world feel more flexible. At the same time, the time limit creates a difficult design problem. Ubisoft needs to make the player feel pressure without making the game frustrating. If the timer is too strict, players may feel forced to ignore side activities. If it is too generous, the system may have little effect. The final balance will be very important if the feature is included. The same applies to survival mechanics. They can make an open-world game more interesting when used carefully, but too many systems can slow down the experience. Far Cry has always been known for giving players freedom and action, so Ubisoft will need to make sure the new mechanics support that freedom rather than getting in the way. The leaks also suggest that player choices could lead to different story outcomes. This would fit well with the rescue concept. A player may not be able to save everyone, especially if the timer is real. That could give the campaign more emotional weight and make players think about their decisions. It could also encourage multiple playthroughs. On the first attempt, a player might focus on one family member and miss another. On a second playthrough, they could choose a different route and see how the story changes. This would give the campaign more value beyond the first completion. However, it is important to remember that leaked information can be wrong. Some details may have come from early development, while others may describe separate Far Cry projects. Ubisoft has not officially confirmed the full story, setting, gameplay systems, or technical details discussed in these reports. What makes these leaks interesting is the possible combination of all these features. A time limit, a family rescue story, player choices, survival systems, a large wilderness environment, improved movement, and a new engine would represent a clear change from the recent games. Far Cry 7 could still have the familiar elements that fans expect. Players may still use guns, vehicles, stealth, explosives, wildlife, and the environment to deal with enemies. The difference could be that these features now have more purpose. Every action could be connected to the larger goal of rescuing the family before time runs out. If Ubisoft manages to combine these systems properly, Far Cry 7 could feel more focused and more reactive than its predecessors. The open world would not simply be a large place filled with activities. It could become part of the story itself, where distance, weather, enemies, resources, and time all affect the player's choices. For now, the best approach is to treat Far Cry 7's leaks as possible information rather than confirmed facts. The reported story about the Sons of Truth, the possible 72-hour countdown, the Alaskan connection, the survival systems, and the move towards Snowdrop all point toward a different kind of Far Cry game. Until Ubisoft gives a full official reveal, the final version remains uncertain. Still, if these reports are close to the truth, Far Cry 7 could bring a major change to the series. Instead of simply offering another large map and another group of enemies, Ubisoft may be building a game around time, choice, survival, and consequences. That direction could make the next Far Cry feel fresh, while keeping the open-world action that has made the series so popular.